Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. This Saturday is UFC 294, Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski 2, and this is going to be my full card predictions. I'm going to go through every single fight on the card and give you a breakdown and prediction. Starting off with the first fight of the night, Bruno Silva versus Sharabutdin Magomedov. Sharabullet finally making his UFC debut, and I'm surprised this is opening up the card, but this is a banger matchup to open up the card. You have Bruno Silva, who's kind of been hit or miss. He's coming off a loss against Breeden Allen. He was in that fight. You look at the fight before that, beat Brad Tavares, brutally KO'd him. Then lost to Gerald Meerschaert, got finished, got submitted by Gerald Meerschaert. Fight before that, had a competitive fight with Alex Pereira. So it's really kind of hard to gauge where Bruno Silva is. And he's kind of like a measuring stick for the middleweight division. He's kind of like a gatekeeper for like the top 20 to top 15. And you have Sharabutdin Magomedov coming in with a lot of hype, the one-eyed Russian, 11-0, 10 of those 11 wins are via finish, and he's looked unbelievable. And I know a lot of people are going to hear the last name Magomedov, they're automatically going to go, oh, this is a wrestler. Sharabutdin Magomedov is primarily a striker, primarily a kicker. He's unbelievable on the feet. His wrestling isn't all that great. It's not horrible. It's not great. It's just kind of in the middle. It's decent wrestling. He doesn't really mix it up all that much. But on the feet, unbelievable kicks. I mean, he knocked a guy out with a hook kick before. He has nasty knees in the clinch. He's just super powerful on the feet. And, you know, I think in this fight, don't get me wrong, I think Bruno Silva could get it done. He could come out and shock us and get it done because Bruno Silva has very good striking, very good power himself. And, you know, he could go out there and finish him, but I just don't see that happening. I think Magomedov, too powerful, too good on the feet. And Bruno Silva just throws wild winging hooks where Magomedov's kind of more technical on the feet. He kind of picks his shots a little bit more. He has decent hands, but his kicks are phenomenal. His leg kicks, his body kicks, his spinning attacks on the feet as well. I just think Magomedov's going to come out. He's going to be far more technical. And Bruno Silva, I don't trust his chin anymore. He's 34 years old. He's taken a lot of damage over the last couple years. I'm going Sharabutdin Magomedov to have a spectacular first round KO. I'm going to say Sharabutdin Magomedov first round head kick KO. He catches Bruno Silva with a nasty head kick, drops him badly, and then finishes him off with ground and pound in the first round. Moving up on the card, we have Jinh Frey versus Victoria Dudakova. Both these women are like kind of mirrors of each other. Neither one of them have good striking. Both of them have straight up garbage striking, and both of them really primarily look to grapple. You have Jinh Frey on a 3-fight losing streak, lost to Elise Reed, lost to Poliana Viana where she got absolutely starched in the first round, lost to Vanessa Demopoulos, and then you have Dudakova, hasn't fought the best competition. She's coming off that win over Estela Nunes. I actually picked Nunes in that fight, but she injured her arm on a takedown attempt from Dudakova. And then the Maria Silva win on Dana White's Contender Series. Really, when I look at this matchup, I just think Victoria Dudakova has better grappling than Jinh Frey. And I think Jinh Frey maybe has a slight advantage on the feet, but I don't think either one of them is like significantly better on the feet than the other. So I really think Victoria Dudakova comes out, kind of imposes her will in the grappling, imposes her will with the wrestling. You know, it's not super dominant by any means, but I think she gets it done. I'm going to go Victoria Dudakova via decision, 30-27. Fairly dominant decision, but it's not going to be anything that's like, oh my God, she did so much damage. But I see her getting it done with the grappling, with the wrestling. I seen Vanessa Demopoulos have some control time against Jinh Frey up against the fence. I have to go Victoria Dudakova via decision. Moving up on the card, this card is so good. We have Nathaniel Wood versus Mohammad Naimov. I'm really looking forward to this matchup. This is a banger matchup. You have Nathaniel Wood, who's been a prospect in the featherweight division for a while. He's a guy who's very technical on the feet. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. His last loss was 3 years ago against Casey Kenny. Then you have Mohammad Naimov. He's coming off the win against Jamie Mullarkey on short notice. Went out there. He was having some trouble with Jamie Mullarkey. Mullarkey was mixing in the grappling, was landing some good shots on the feet, but Naimov was finding his shots of his own. He was looking for takedowns as well, mixing in against Jamie Mullarkey, and then boom, clips Jamie Mullarkey with a big shot and finishes him in his UFC debut on short notice. And now he's getting a pretty big jump up, I feel. I feel like Nathaniel Wood is one of those guys we've had our eye on for a while as a potential top 15 featherweight. He hasn't quite made it there yet, but he's 30 years old. He's arguably hitting his prime. You know, both of them similar reach, only a 1-inch reach advantage for Naimov, and then you have a 3-inch height advantage for Naimov. I just think when I see Naimov struggling a little bit with Jamie Mullarkey, I have to pick Nathaniel Wood. I know he ran into some trouble against Andre Fili, and he got clipped up by Andre Fili quite a few times. And honestly, when I was watching that Andre Fili fight, I was thinking about picking Naimov in this fight, but then I watched Naimov's fight against Jamie Mullarkey, and he's kind of getting clipped up with some good shots. I think he's very, very fast, and he's very athletic on the feet, but I just think Nathaniel Wood's more technical, has a better variety of attack, and I think also Nathaniel Wood can mix in the grappling. Jamie Mullarkey was taking down Naimov in their fight a couple times. He didn't really hold him down, but you know, Jamie Mullarkey took that fight on short notice as well. So I'm going to go, I think this fight could go either way. I'm not super confident in this, but I'm going to go Nathaniel Wood 29-28 decision. I think he's going to get it done, just be the more well-rounded fighter. I think he's going to land the better shots on the feet, use his footwork, not get clipped with a big shot, but don't be surprised if Nathaniel Wood gets brutally KO'd, because sometimes I feel like these UK guys get hyped a little bit too much just because they're from the UK and the UFC is trying to build a new star in the UK. And so some of these guys, the fan bases kind of get carried away a little bit. And I think Nathaniel Wood's good, but I think he might be a little bit overhyped a little bit. And I think people aren't expecting him in any way, shape, or form to lose this fight. And I could totally see a scenario. He's getting clipped up by Andre Fili, who's not the greatest striker by any means. Naimov has much more power, in my opinion, than Andre Fili. So I could see Naimov clipping him and putting him out. But outside of that, I see Nathaniel Wood winning a 29-28 decision. Maybe Naimov gets one round, lands a couple big shots, but doesn't knock out Nathaniel Wood, and he gets him hurt a little bit and looks for a finish, but doesn't really get super close to it. Wins a round that way, and then the rest of the rounds is just Nathaniel Wood mixing everything together, striking from the outside, mixing in some grappling as well, and winning the fight that way. So I'm going Nathaniel Wood via decision. Moving up on the card, I mean, this card is so good. You have Anshul Jubli versus Mike Breeden. This is kind of one of the worst fights on the card, but it's still a decent fight. I'm really looking forward to seeing Jubli fight Mike Breeden. I mean, where's Jeff Nowitzki? Jeff Nowitzki, he cries at press conferences saying, I care so much about the fighters. Mike Breeden's on a 3-fight losing streak, and he got starched badly by Terrence McKinney a little under 2 months ago. So where's Jeff Nowitzki caring about the health and safety of the fighters with this fight? You have Jubli, who made his UFC debut in his last fight, got a KO, ground and pound TKO. It was the road to the UFC fights. He made it to the finals. He won it. He's 7-0. He's kind of inexperienced for the most part, but he's fighting Mike Breeden, who's 10-6 on a 3-fight losing streak. Not even losing to the best competition. Got KO'd by Alexander Hernandez, lost a decision to Natan Levy, and then got brutally KO'd by Terrence McKinney in his last fight. Actually, it was more of a TKO, but either way, got destroyed in the first round. I think you look at Mike Breeden, he's not great anywhere. He's just kind of a mediocre fighter that just is kind of, you know, he's all right. He's kind of there. He doesn't really belong in the UFC. And you have Jubli, who is very fast, has excellent grappling, has good scrambling ability, good BJJ as well. And you know, when I look at this matchup, I think Mike Breeden's going to get out-grappled easily. I see Jubli landing on the feet just to set up his takedown, set up a takedown, get it down. I think he's going to dominate Mike Breeden on the ground. I see him getting into an advantageous position, maybe a full mount on the ground, and then pounding him out. I don't think Mike Breeden's going to be able to hang with him on the ground. I don't think he has the skills. I think Jubli is a very good fighter. I think he's a very good fighter. Obviously, he hasn't fought the best competition, but it's not horrible competition. 11-3, 2-2, okay, 5-4, okay. But I think Jubli has shown much more in those fights, and especially in his UFC debut, he went out there and looked incredible against a guy who's 13-2. Meanwhile, Mike Breeden hasn't won a fight in 2.5 years, and it was against a guy who was 12-8. So I think Anshul Jubli gets it done, first round TKO on the ground, maybe like a full mount ground and pound TKO, or I could even see Mike Breeden giving up his back and getting rear naked choked in the first round. But either way, Jubli gets it done. Moving up on the card, we have Sedriques Dumas versus Abu Azaitar. This is a fight that is very interesting to pick. It's a very difficult fight to pick in general because Dumas, you're looking at his recent win. He got a win over Cody Brundage. And Cody Brundage, honestly, I felt like could have won that fight if he didn't just keep pulling guillotines over and over and over again. But he got out-grappled by Dumas. You have Abu Azaitar, hasn't fought in 2.5 years. His last fight was against Marc-Andre Barriault 2 years and 6 months ago. So 2.5 years ago. The fight before that was 5 years ago. So I don't know what to expect out of Abu Azaitar. He's 37 years old. But then you have Dumas, who lost to Josh Frem 6 months ago, got submitted by Josh Frem, and then he made his UFC, or didn't make his UFC debut. He got his first win kind of in the UFC at Dana White's Contender Series against a guy who's just kind of mediocre himself. I don't think Dumas is that good, to be honest. And I feel like this fight's a coin flip because I don't trust either guy to get it done. I don't trust Abu. I have no idea where his skill set's going to be after all these years. And Dumas, I think he's bottom of the barrel UFC fighter. I don't think he's that good on the feet. I don't think he's that good on the ground. And, you know, when I went back and watched some of Abu Azaitar's old fights, I mean, the guy is massive. The guy just wades forward, throws big power shots. And, you know, he had decent cardio. He would start to fade in like the third round. I'm assuming he worked on all that. I'm assuming he's going to be a little bit better, but this is kind of a shot in the dark. And Dumas, he fades. He fades early. If he's not able to really dominate you, he starts to fade in that fight. If he meets any resistance, we saw it in the Josh Fremd fight. So I'm going to go Abu Azaitar, late second round TKO. I think he gets it done over Dumas. I don't trust Dumas to be able to go out there and strike with him. And the size of Azaitar, I don't think he's going to be able to take him down. Honestly, against Cody Brundage, the only reason he even ended up on top was because Brundage was pulling guillotines over and over and over again. So I'm going to go Abu Azaitar, kind of a shot in the dark, not super confident in it, but I feel like it could go to Abu Azaitar. I think he's going to go out there. I think he's going to look to get a statement win. I think he's going to be like, I'm making my return finally. It's now or never. I'm 37 years old. It's probably already past the time for him to be anything in the UFC. The UFC's trying to feed me to Sedriques Dumas. I'm going to go out there and brutally KO him. I'm going Azaitar, second round TKO. Moving up on the card, we have Javid Basharat versus Victor Henry. Javid Basharat has looked very good in the UFC. He's 14-0. He's undefeated. He's coming off a win against Mateus Mendoza. And in that fight, he looked okay. He didn't look great. I mean, Javid Basharat, I feel like Farid Basharat's definitely the better of the brothers, but maybe I'm crazy. Before that, got a win over Tony Gravely. Out-grappled him, outstruck him on the feet. He's just kind of a decision machine in the UFC. Beat Trevin Jones as well. And then the fight before that, he got a submission on Dana White's Contender Series. Victor Henry, his last fight is against Tony Gravely as well. Split decision. So, you know, I know MMA math doesn't always work, but you look at a recent opponent. You have Victor Henry, who fought Tony Gravely 6 months ago. You have Javid Basharat, who fought him a year ago. Javid Basharat beat him better. Javid Basharat won a more decisive win where Victor Henry's getting a split decision win. And then you look, he lost to Rafael Sunsao. Victor Henry lost to Rafael Sunsao less than a year ago. Rafael Sunsao's kind of on his way out. So I think Javid Basharat in this fight, he's a really good striker. He's not great. He rolls well defensively while his opponent's trying to hit him. He gets hit a bit, but he rolls really well with the punches. He's really good on scrambles. And his fights usually start out competitive, and then all of a sudden he starts taking over in that second and third round. And I think he's the better grappler. I think he's the better striker than Victor Henry. So I'm going to go Javid Basharat. I'm going to go second round submission because I think he's going to be landing on the feet. I think you're going to see Victor Henry try to grapple a little bit. Victor Henry's kind of a well-rounded fighter. He doesn't really particularly like one way or the other, whether it be striking or grappling. I see him losing on the feet. I see him knowing that he's losing on the feet, and I see him trying to initiate some takedowns and some clinch work. I see Javid Basharat kind of reversing position, ending up on top, landing some ground and pound, and I think Javid Basharat eventually will find a submission. I'll say second round arm triangle for Javid Basharat, but either way, even if Basharat starts landing on the feet, Basharat likes to mix in the grappling as well, so I could see him shooting in on a takedown. But either way, I see Javid Basharat winning this fight. If he doesn't win it by submission, he will definitely win it by decision most likely. I don't see Javid Basharat getting a KO by any means, but I'm going Javid Basharat, second round arm triangle submission over Victor Henry. Moving up on the card, we have Muhammad Yahya versus Trevor Peek. Trevor Peek back in action again. This guy fights like he's at the Kentucky State Fair fighting for $250 in a funnel cake every time out. He had that fight against Chepe Mariscal last time out 3 months ago. Everyone was picking Trevor Peek in that fight. I picked Chepe Mariscal in that fight because I knew Chepe Mariscal had the grappling, and also he was an absolute dog in every single fight. He's a brawler. Trevor Peek, I know he's so much fun to watch, but he's bottom of the barrel UFC fighter. He really is. You know, he's got a win over Eric Gonzalez where he got a TKO. But he's a maniac in the cage, so he can always get it done. He goes out there, pressures you, throws big bombs, looks for finishes. Then you have Muhammad Yahya, who's making his UFC debut. He's coming from some Abu Dhabi promotion where he was champion. I watched some of his fights. He's fighting 5-round fights, so he has decent cardio, and he looks pretty good against the competition he's fighting. Isn't the greatest, a guy who's 5-3, a guy who's 7-4, a guy who's 7-2. But he's a decent technical fighter. He has okay power as well. And he has okay grappling. There were some times where he ended up in bad positions on the ground, but he found a way to fight out of those positions and end up on top. And I just don't trust Trevor Peek at all. I'm going to be honest. I thought about picking Trevor Peek just because the way he rushes forward and kind of just fights really wild. I feel like he could find Muhammad Yahya's chin. Even in the fight I watched of Muhammad Yahya, he got clipped badly in a fight that he was winning. And Trevor Peek makes it uncomfortable for the guy he's fighting. So I could see that happening. But I think Muhammad Yahya will be able to fight the more technical fight, avoid the onslaughts of Trevor Peek. He's only fighting a 3-round fight. I think his last couple fights have all been 5-round. Maybe the last 2 or 3 fights for Yahya has been 5-round fights. He doesn't have to worry about going that extra 10 minutes. So I think Muhammad Yahya gets it done. I'm going to say he gets it done via decision. I'm going to say maybe Trevor Peek steals the first round by just being an outright savage and rushing forward and throwing combinations. But I think as the fight goes on, I think Muhammad Yahya will be the more technical fighter. I think he'll be landing the better shots. I think he'll even mix in the wrestling a little bit, land some ground and pound. I think he wins the last 2 rounds, and I see Muhammad Yahya winning this fight over Trevor Peek via decision. Moving up on the card, I mean, this card is amazing. On the prelims, we have Tim Elliott versus Muhammad Mokaev. What an outright banger this is. This is a great test for Muhammad Mokaev. I'm really looking forward to this fight. You have Muhammad Mokaev, unbelievable wrestling, unbelievable submission ability, super promising prospect, only 23 years old. Then you have Tim Elliott, been around forever, 36 years old, going on 37 years old. And this is a really good test for Mokaev because Tim Elliott's such a weird fighter. He's so weird on the feet. He's so weird in the grappling exchanges. He's so weird when he's striking. His footwork is incredibly weird. And he's hard to finish as well. He's not a fighter that's really easy to get out of there. But you have Mokaev 9-0, undefeated, coming off that win over Jeffel Filio. Got a rear naked choke. In that fight, he almost got submitted a couple times and just refused to tap. He was in like a knee bar towards, I think, the end of the 3rd round, refused to tap there. Went out there, was able to get the finish there via rear naked choke. Submitted Malcolm Gordon in the fight before that. One fight I want to highlight, submitted Cody Durden, which has kind of aged quite well. Landed a flying knee and then was able to find a guillotine and submit him. And I think Muhammad Mokaev is a guy that's going to be a very notable prospect in the flyweight division. And Tim Elliott, his striking isn't that great. It's wonky, it's weird, but it isn't that great. He has very good grappling. So I could see maybe Mokaev's going to have trouble taking Tim Elliott down. But I think ultimately Mokaev's better on the feet. You know, fundamentally, I think Mokaev's better on the feet. Now, that doesn't mean Tim Elliott can't go out there because of his wonky style, somehow end up winning this fight. But we've seen Tim Elliott. We've seen him get taken down. We've seen him get controlled before. He has good grappling, but only against guys who are really kind of bottom of the barrel grappling. Also, Tim Elliott has good cardio as well, but Mokaev, we've seen him go 3 rounds. It's not like he's gassing out even when he's constantly looking for takedowns and grappling. I see Mokaev getting it done. I see him outstriking Tim Elliott on the feet. I see him mixing in the takedowns. I see him finding takedowns, some control. There's going to be some crazy scrambles because Tim Elliott's very hard to hold down. But as Tim Elliott starts to slow down a little bit, I see Mokaev finding a submission. I'm going to go Muhammad Mokaev 2nd round rear naked choke. I think Tim Elliott, sometimes he leaves his neck exposed. When he's scrambling around on the ground, trying to get back to his feet, he leaves his neck exposed. I think Muhammad Mokaev is going to eventually find a submission somewhere along the lines, whether it's a guillotine or whether he ends up getting in a bad position because he's scrambling out and gives up his back, and Mokaev ends up on his back and gets a rear naked choke. I think Mokaev will find a finish, 2nd or 3rd round submission, but I'm going 2nd round rear naked choke. I'm going to say Tim Elliott scrambles up, tries to just power his way to his feet after he gets taken down. He gives up the back. Mokaev locks in the body triangle and then finds a rear naked choke before the end of the round in the 2nd round. Moving up on the card, the first fight on the main card, Said Nurmagomedov versus Muin Gafurov. I love this fight. I absolutely love this fight. Said Nurmagomedov. Last name Nurmagomedov, people think grappler, people think wrestler, people think Dagestani wrestler like Khabib and Islam Makhachev. Said Nurmagomedov, primarily a striker, primarily a kicker. You have Muin Gafurov, who likes to wrestle, actually, likes to take guys down. He's coming off his UFC debut on short notice against John Castaneda, where he tried to mix in his grappling, but he didn't have a whole lot of success. But he just, he wasn't able to hold John Castaneda down, and he was getting outstruck on the feet. And honestly, even though I think this fight is an interesting fight, I think this is kind of a fight to get Said Nurmagomedov back on track. He lost his last fight against Jonathan Martinez, but honestly, that fight against Jonathan Martinez, I thought Said Nurmagomedov won that fight. You look at the fight before that, he fought Sedriques Kakhramonov. Sedriques Kakhramonov, a relentless wrestler, nonstop, who was winning the fight against Said, taking him down, making him scramble, making him tired, and then Said Nurmagomedov found a guillotine and submitted him. You look at the fight before that, got a win over Douglas Silva de Andrade via decision. You look at the fight before that, that quick finish over Cody Stamann. I just think Muin Gafurov, I think he's going to be shooting in on takedowns. I think Nurmagomedov has a massive advantage on the feet. And I just don't think Gafurov has the striking to be competitive with Nurmagomedov on the feet. So I think that's going to force him. He's just going to be shooting takedown after takedown after takedown. And I think that leaves him susceptible. We have a Said Nurmagomedov. We've seen him. He has an excellent guillotine. He's excellent submission skills. He has really good grappling. His takedown defense isn't the greatest, but that's against really high-level, high-pressure wrestlers like Sedriques Kakramanov, who I know is not in the UFC, but that's absolutely criminal. He should be in the UFC. I don't think Muin Gafurov has that type of wrestling and that relentless pace to put it on Said Nurmagomedov from start to finish and get maybe a decision win, because I don't see him finishing Nurmagomedov. So what I see in this fight, I see Nurmagomedov stuffing takedowns, trying to scramble out of the position, using kicks on the outside, outstriking Gafurov. And I think eventually you're going to see Gafurov shoot in on a sloppy takedown, and I think Said Nurmagomedov's going to find the neck. I'm going first round guillotine, Said Nurmagomedov. I think he gets it done. I think Gafurov just going to be spamming those takedowns. I don't think he has the striking on the feet to stay competitive. There's not that much of a reach disadvantage. There's not much that much of a height disadvantage, but I think the skill gap is entirely too far. I mean, think about it. Said Nurmagomedov arguably beat Jonathan Martinez in his last fight. Look how good Jonathan Martinez is, whether it be striking or in the clinch, on the ground. Regardless, Jonathan Martinez is looking for like a top 5 fight in his next fight. And Said Nurmagomedov arguably won that fight. And you have Gafurov, who lost to John Castaneda in his last fight. And then you look at his opponents before that, not the greatest opponents in LFA. They're not horrible competition, but by no means are they the level of competition that Said Nurmagomedov has faced. So I'm going Said Nurmagomedov, first round guillotine as Gafurov looks for a takedown. Moving up on the card, we have Ikram Aliskerov versus Warley Alves. I'm a bit disappointed in this matchup because it was originally supposed to be Ikram Aliskerov versus Nasruddin Imavov. Unfortunately, Nasruddin Imavov had to pull out with visa issues, I believe it was. And now we get this fight, which is nowhere near as competitive as the original fight. Warley Alves lost 3 out of his last 4 fights. He lost his last fight against Nicholas Dalby, who's not even in the same universe skill-wise as Ikram Aliskerov. Fight before that, lost to Jeremiah Wells, got finished by Jeremiah Wells. And his last win against a guy who isn't even that good, Manor Lazez, and that was almost 3 years ago. Almost 3 years ago. He's 32 years old. Warley Alves has okay striking, decent power. He has decent BJJ as well, but he can be controlled in the wrestling. He can be controlled up against the fence. We've seen it in the Nicholas Dalby fight. Meanwhile, you have Ikram Aliskerov, who's finished 10 out of his 14 wins. His only loss in his pro MMA career, he's 14-1, is against Khamzat Chimaev, so look how well that's aged. I think Ikram Aliskerov gets this done via finish. I'm going to go Ikram Aliskerov first round KO. But honestly, it could be submission, it could be KO. I think he gets it done in the first round regardless. I don't think Warley Alves is anywhere close to the level of Ikram Aliskerov. And on top of that, Warley Alves taking it on like 3 weeks notice, flying out to Abu Dhabi, 3 weeks notice against Aliskerov. I think he gets finished badly in the first round. Maybe gets clipped on the feet. Aliskerov follows him to the ground and brutally ground and pounds him. But I see if Alves has any success on the feet at all, you're going to see Aliskerov shoot it on a takedown, easily get the takedown, easily get control, and start landing ground and pound, and eventually either find a finish TKO via ground and pound, or eventually find a submission, maybe a Kimura, maybe an arm triangle, or something along those lines. But Aliskerov, I believe he gets the finish in the first round. Moving up on the card to the featured fight on the main card, we have Magomed Ankalaev versus Johnny Walker. What a matchup in the light heavyweight division. Arguably, Magomed Ankalaev could be the light heavyweight champ right now. His last fight was for the vacant belt against Jan Blachowicz. Most people thought he won the fight. Ultimately, it ended up being scored a draw, which I didn't have an issue with. But I thought Magomed Ankalaev should have won that fight. But again, it wasn't egregious to make it a draw. And now he's fighting Johnny Walker, the fight we didn't anticipate almost a year later now. It's 10 months later. How did that even happen? UFC 282 was 10 months ago. That's insanity. He's fighting Johnny Walker, who's on a surging 3-fight winning streak. We thought Johnny Walker, he had this massive hype train when he made his way into the UFC, and then all of a sudden it kind of died off and he started losing and everyone thought it was done. Now he's on a 3-fight winning streak. He beat Anthony Smith in his last fight. The fight before that beat Paul Craig, absolutely destroyed Paul Craig. The fight before that submitted Iwan Kutalaba. They're not the greatest wins, though. They're not the greatest wins, but Magomed Ankalaev, his win streak before this, Anthony Smith, he KO'd Anthony Smith, TKO'd him really on ground and pound, but Anthony Smith was injured from like leg kicks. Fight before that, a decision win over Thiago Santos. Fight before that, a decision win over Volkan Ozdemir. Fight before that, decision win over Nikita Krylov. So Magomed Ankalaev, one thing you notice in his fights, very patient, very, very patient. Doesn't really have that killer instinct. the only recent fight that I remember him really going out there and looking for a finish was against Iwan Cutelaba. So you have a couple opponents in common here for Magomed Ankalaev. He has the win over Thiago Santos. Johnny Walker, not that long ago, lost a decision to Thiago Santos. And then he also got brutally KO'd by Jamal Hill, got posterized by Jamal Hill. But that aged fine. I mean, Jamal Hill was the champion, technically kind of still is the champion until, the new vacant light heavyweight title fight goes down at UFC 295. Technically, Jamal Hill is still the champion. This is a matchup that's very, very interesting because I could see it going either way. Johnny Walker's so explosive, so powerful, so dynamic on the feet. Magomed Ankalaev, very conservative on the feet, but has power, has very good kicks, primarily a striker. People probably see his name, Magomed Ankalaev. They think he's a grappler, but he has good grappling. He went out there and dominated Jan Blachowicz the last 2 rounds of that vacant title fight. He dominated him with the grappling, landed some good ground and pound. Ultimately, I have to go Magomed Ankalaev. I don't think Johnny Walker, I think he's gotten better, but I still don't think he's that good. I was higher on him a long time ago when he kind of entered the UFC and then he got kind of exposed. I don't think the win over Anthony Smith was that good. Anthony Smith looked like he wanted to quit in that fight, and Johnny Walker couldn't find a finish. He beat Paul Craig. Paul Craig has some of the worst striking I've ever seen in my entire life, and then went down to middleweight. But Paul Craig has the win over Magomed Ankalaev, so what does that say? I think Magomed Ankalaev thrives when he has a very aggressive opponent. So I could see Magomed Ankalaev getting a KO here because I don't trust Johnny Walker's chin. But ultimately, I'm going to go Magomed Ankalaev 30-27 decision. I think Johnny Walker's going to be tentative in this fight because he's going to be worried about the power of Ankalaev. Ankalaev's always tentative. He's always just throwing teep kicks, kind of staying at range, landing some leg kicks. I could see Walker starting to abuse that leg of Ankalaev, similar to what Jan Blachowicz did. But I think Johnny Walker's going to have to clip him and put him out, and I don't see that happening. Magomed Ankalaev is so defensively responsible. He has the grappling in his back pocket. We've seen Anthony Smith get takedowns on Johnny Walker. I think Magomed Ankalaev, if he starts losing on the feet, he'll just shoot a takedown. I know we would, people thought we would see that earlier against Jan Blachowicz, but I think Magomed Ankalaev gets it done. I could see him getting a KO. If Johnny Walker gets ultra aggressive and starts getting wild looking for a KO finish himself, I see Magomed Ankalaev clipping him and putting him away. But ultimately, I think Walker's kind of going to be in that same, type fight game plan as he had against Thiago Santos, where he's just fainting and not throwing enough. And I think Magomed Ankalaev is going to be kicking the legs, teep into the body, landing combinations, circling, doing the same over and over again. I see Magomed Ankalaev winning a comfortable 30-27 decision. Moving up on the card, the co-main event, we have Kamaru Usman versus Khamzat Chimaev at middleweight. What a matchup this is. I'm really looking forward to this fight. But I kind of hate that it's on short notice, but I still love this fight because this is a fight I dreamed of for a while. It kind of got spoiled. Leon Edwards landed the head kick KO, and then Khamzat Chimaev missed weight when he was supposed to fight Nate Diaz, and everything just kind of fell apart, and the timing never worked out. This is a fight I dreamed of. Now, originally, this was supposed to be Paulo Costa versus Khamzat Chimaev, but this co-main event, I absolutely love. I think it's very, very interesting. And Dana White's saying the winner of this fight is going to get a title shot in the middleweight division, which is even more interesting, but doesn't surprise me. And I know a lot of people are going to say, Kamaru Usman's taken in on 10 days notice, 11 days notice. I don't think that's necessarily true. Now, I do believe Kamaru Usman's taken in on short notice, which I think is a massive factor. But I think the UFC knew about this for many weeks. Paulo Costa posted online, I had surgery 3 weeks ago. I think the UFC knew right then and there, okay, this fight's in jeopardy. We want to keep Khamzat on the card, so therefore, we're going to start looking for a backup. They probably talked to Kamaru Usman. They told Kamaru Usman, make sure you stay ready. Kamaru Usman's a guy who stays in the gym typically anyway. And so I think Kamaru Usman's probably coming in on 3 weeks notice, 4 weeks notice, really. I think he was probably preparing, staying ready in case Paulo Costa fell out. And this is a matchup that I do love, but I do kind of hate just because it's on short notice. But Kamaru Usman also coming off 2 straight losses. Lost to Leon Edwards via decision in his last fight. Got KO'd by Leon Edwards in the fight before that. But in a different universe, Kamaru Usman's still champion because that 5th round, he's clearly winning. He's clearly up on the scorecards. Gets clipped with a head kick KO in the last minute. And then also the rematch was very, very competitive. I know people acted like Leon Edwards dominated that fight. That was a very close fight that honestly I thought could have went either way. I thought maybe you favor a draw because of the point deduction. But nonetheless, Kamaru Usman could still be champion. He's still a very good fighter. You have Khamzat Chimaev 12-0. Hasn't fought in over a year. His last fight was against Kevin Holland. His only real test in his entire pro MMA career was against Gilbert Burns, and he had trouble in that fight. He was a wild man in that fight, but he got clipped quite a few times. So don't be surprised if Kamaru Usman wins this fight. Don't be surprised if Kamaru Usman KOs Khamzat Chimaev in this fight. But ultimately, Going up to 185, I don't know how much that benefits Kamaru Usman, especially on short notice. Khamzat Chimaev had a full training camp where he put on weight. He's not cutting weight and sucking himself down to get to 170. And also, my analysis of Kamaru Usman's skills for years has been Kamaru Usman has god-awful striking that's improving, but his striking is very effective because of the threat of the wrestling. And that's what we've seen time and time again. His striking was effective against Leon Edwards because of the threat of the takedown. His striking was effective against guys like Jorge Masvidal because of the threat of the takedown. Now, you look at the Colby Covington fight, the striking wasn't as effective. I know it was an outright striking match and he did win, but it was closer because the threat of the takedown wasn't there because Colby had good grappling. Now, ultimately got the finish, and I do think Kamaru Usman's striking has been improving, but I think it's horrible. And I think in this fight against Khamzat Chimaev, he doesn't have the threat of the takedown. They're up a weight class. Khamzat Chimaev is known for his grappling and wrestling. And I think in this fight, Kamaru Usman coming in on short notice, I think he's going to be undersized against Khamzat. I think Khamzat's going to have a size advantage. I think Khamzat has better striking overall. I know Khamzat doesn't have the most technical striking. I know he kind of comes out and brawls. I think in this fight, he has the better striking. He has the far superior striking to Kamaru Usman. I think he's going to be chopping the legs. I think he's going to be throwing combinations. I think he's not going to be worried at all if Kamaru Usman shoots in on a takedown. I could see even Khamzat looking for a takedown against Usman or even controlling Usman a little bit in the against the fence in the clinch. So I have to go Khamzat Chimaev in this fight. I'm going to do a full breakdown on this fight, so make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. But I have to go Khamzat Chimaev. I debated about picking him via decision, but I've really started thinking about all the factors. You have Kamaru Usman going on 37 years old. Kamaru Usman coming off 2 straight losses. His confidence probably isn't great. Kamaru Usman coming in on short notice, whether it's 11 days notice or 3 weeks notice or a month's notice. He's coming in on short notice. He's going up a weight class. How can I pick him against Khamzat Chimaev? I'm going Khamzat Chimaev second round TKO. I think he finds a shot. I think he finishes Kamaru Usman. I think Kamaru Usman is going to be in good shape. We could see a hard fought like decision win for Khamzat Chimaev where it's very competitive, but Khamzat Chimaev clearly wins. But there's just too many factors. I thought about picking Kamaru Usman. There's too many factors here for me to go with Kamaru Usman at 185 pounds on short notice. And it's only a 3-round fight, so it's not like, Kamaru Usman was known for his cardio. It's not even like we know if his cardio is going to be 100%, and it's not even a 5-round fight. So I have to go Khamzat Chimaev. I think Khamzat is going to be putting the pressure. I think he's going to be looking to put on a statement performance. He's undefeated. He doesn't know what it's like to lose. His confidence is at an all-time high. I think he's going to go out there, rush Kamaru Usman. I think he's going to eat some shots. I think Kamaru Usman will land some jabs. I think Kamaru Usman will clinch up a little bit, maybe, land some shots, some dirty boxing in the clinch. But I think ultimately Khamzat Chimaev is going to find a shot that hurts Kamaru Usman, and I think he's going to finish Kamaru Usman via ground and pound after hurting him, or maybe even like a standing TKO. It's hard to imagine. I know we got flatline KO'd by Leon Edwards, but that head kick was just perfectly placed. Kamaru Usman's known for his granite chin. I think Khamzat Chimaev, it's going to be like a TKO where Kamaru Usman just takes too many shots. The referee pulls off Khamzat Chimaev. So ultimately, Khamzat Chimaev, second round TKO. Moving up on the card to the main event, we have Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski 2. Alexander Volkanovski stepping in for Charles Oliveira in an attempt to become double champion in a rematch from February this year at UFC 284. This is a highly compelling matchup. I hate the fact that it's on short notice. This is a rematch that I wanted one day. I hate the fact that it's on short notice. And you have two guys who are just pound for pound, two of the best fighters in the world right now. And you look back at their fight at UFC 284. I know a lot of people say, oh, Alexander Volkanovski won that fight. I don't think Alexander Volkanovski won that fight by any means. I think there's a reasonable argument to make that Islam Makhachev won that fight 4-1. I personally would score it 3-2, but a lot of people just think Alexander Volkanovski won that fight because he won the 5th round. And in that fight, what won Islam Makhachev that fight wasn't the grappling, it was the striking. He was out-striking Alexander Volkanovski on the feet. Maybe that was because of the fear of the takedown for Alexander Volkanovski, but ultimately, Islam Makhachev's striking is better than anyone ever gives him credit for. He's on this long winning streak. He fought Volkanovski in the last fight, and now he's fighting Volkanovski again, granted on short notice, but he prepared for him earlier this year. And on top of that, Volkanovski doesn't have a full camp. I don't know where Volkanovski's cardio is going to be for this fight. And also Volkanovski, I believe, is coming off a hand surgery. So there was talk of this fight happening in Abu Dhabi early this year, even after Volkanovski beat Yahya Rodriguez in July. But then it kind of fizzled out. Then we got Charles Oliveira. So maybe Volkanovski's been preparing this whole time, but I doubt it, considering Charles Oliveira literally got injured the day before he was scheduled to head to Abu Dhabi. And ultimately in this fight, I don't see a way Alexander Volkanovski gets it done, because Alexander Volkanovski, it's not like he's got one punch KO power. It's not like Islam Makhachev has a horrible chin. I know people talk about the Adriano Martins KO or Brendan Schaub talking about Alexandre Pantoja KO'd him, but that was a long time ago, and he got clipped perfectly and put away. And in this fight, I just think Islam Makhachev's too defensively responsible. He's too defensively sound, and he's too good on the feet, pumping the jab, teep kicks to the body, maintaining range. And then when he needs to, he mixes in the grappling, and then he takes you down, he gets your back, he controls you, lands some ground and pound, looks for a submission. Meanwhile, Volkanovski, don't get me wrong, he's the elite of the elite. He is world class. He is super well-rounded. But how does he beat Makhachev? He's not going to out-grapple him. I don't see a scenario where he goes out there and just outstrikes him to a decision, so he's going to have to get a KO. Alexander Volkanovski's going to have to get a KO. Now, how do I think Alexander Volkanovski fights in this fight? I think in the first 2 rounds, he's going to come out looking for a KO. I think Volkanovski, in his head, he's going to think, look, I don't know if I can go 5 hard rounds, so I'm going to look to get a finish early. If I get finished, it doesn't matter. I took this fight on short notice, and shout out to both these guys for taking this fight on short notice. I mean, Islam Makhachev switching from Charles Oliveira to Alexander Volkanovski on short notice is commendable, and Alexander Volkanovski stepping in on 11 days notice is super commendable as well. But ultimately, I'm going to go Islam Makhachev. And if this was a full camp Volkanovski, I'd probably pick Makhachev to win via decision. But I'm going to go Makhachev via 3rd round rear naked choke submission. I think Volkanovski's going to start to slow down more than he would in any other fight because he didn't have a full training camp. And I think Makhachev's going to have better cardio than ever because he has that full time to rehydrate. And I see Makhachev landing good shots on the feet as Volkanovski kind of wades in and looks for big shots early in that 1st and 2nd round, looking for a KO, upset victory. And I think Makhachev will be out grappling him as well. I think he'll shoot takedowns when he needs to. When Volkanovski's overextending, Makhachev will duck under, get the body lock, drag him to the ground, control him, get his back a bit. And I think Volkanovski trying to scramble out of those situations and trying to find a KO because he knows his time, he's living on borrowed time in this fight. I think eventually in that 3rd round, I think Volkanovski's going to start to fade a little bit, and he's going to fade just enough where he makes a mistake on the ground. And I see Islam Makhachev in that 3rd round. He's going to take Volkanovski down. He's going to take his back. He's going to have the body triangle in. And I think Volkanovski's going to be trying to scramble out of that position. He's going to be trying to get out of that position. You're going to have Makhachev landing some ground and pound shots, softening him up. And I think Volkanovski's going to make a mistake in that late 3rd round. And I think Islam Makhachev is going to snatch up the neck of Alexander Volkanovski. And you're going to see Islam Makhachev defend his lightweight title via 3rd round rear naked choke. But ultimately, you never know. With the way MMA has been over the past year in 2023, there's been upset after upset after upset. I just can't pick Alexander Volkanovski, as good as he is. I can't pick him on 11 days notice. I don't know what shape he's in. I don't think even a full camp Alexander Volkanovski gets it done. I don't think he can outstrike Islam Makhachev enough to win a decision. I don't think he can knock out Islam Makhachev. I don't think he can outgrapple Islam Makhachev. I know he can't outgrapple Islam Makhachev. So how does he get it done? I can't pick him. There's not enough avenues to victory. Maybe Volkanovski's in great shape. Maybe he's been staying in the gym nonstop and it hasn't affected him at all and basically has a full camp for this fight. If that's the case, I see Islam Makhachev winning via decision, probably 4 rounds to 1 or even 5 rounds to 0. But ultimately, I just think all of the factors are kind of going against Alexander Volkanovski. Now, granted, similar for Islam Makhachev, but he has the full camp. But he is switching from Oliveira, which is a totally different style matchup than Volkanovski. But I don't think it's going to be as much of a hindrance for Islam Makhachev. At the end of the day, the game plan is the same. Just use your striking to set up your takedowns and use your grappling to find a finish. I think Islam Makhachev finds the rear naked choke in the 3rd round. I don't see a way Alexander Volkanovski gets it done outside of a KO, which I think is highly unlikely. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And thank you so much for watching.